Hello, my name is Anthony, and today we're talking about living off of union wages, particularly from a bricklayer's perspective. I want to give a quick side note. I am no longer in the union. I did it for about 5 years, probably 4 of those professionally, and I moved on to something a little bit better for me personally. But I just want to kind of talk about my experience, where I was at, what kind of went on, and just go from there. So when I started my career, I was a senior going to a trade school, and I did it my last year. So it was a 2-year trade school. So I was a senior in a junior class. So being a 17, 18-year-old going into a classroom full of 15, 16-year-olds, it was pretty horrendous, I'd say. It's pretty strong language. It was not the funnest time ever. There was a bunch of people that were just really immature. It did lead to some funny things, but most overall, it was kind of annoying. But little did I know that this kind of carries over into a lot of the places you go in the trades, where there's a lot of people who don't know how to handle their emotions. So you kind of meet all kinds of walks in life, I think, in any job, but particularly in the trades, because you work with your hands, you're able to make something. So there's a lot of that stereotypical, like, I'm a man's man, I'll fight you if you look at me wrong or say anything, even jokingly. So it kind of goes into that. But that's where I started at. And then after that, I graduated in 2019, and right after graduation, they shipped me on a plane to go to Maryland, which is where the Union State training is. I did that for about 2 months, or I think maybe it was a month, because I was in like the middle of the latter half of the group. And then after I came back from that, I had about a week or two reprieve, and I was sent to a refinery 2.5 hours away. So I'm like located basically almost in the middle of Ohio, and they were having me go up to Toledo, Ohio, and I was working there. So it was about 2.5 hour drive one way. I was working 10-hour shifts for, like I said, oil refinery. I did that for about 7 months or so. Might have been a little bit more. And where I was at in Toledo, they don't have the highest wages in Ohio. So you'll go there, and let's say your home base is paying $19 an hour for a first-year apprentice. Well, over there, I don't have the exact numbers, but it was about $16.70 is what the starting wage was up in Toledo. So I'm going up to a place that is paying me less than where if I were just working local. So it was very discouraging, to say the least, as my first job into the union. And it comes with benefits, of course. So when you work with a union, you get the benefits package, which is what everyone tries selling you on. They're like, oh, it's over $30 in benefits, or whatever. It's a large number. It's bigger than the actual wage that you're getting paid, and it seems like it's nice if you don't want to think about it, but you start thinking about it, and of course you will, because you have union meetings and stuff you have to go to. You got to pay your dues, and you just kind of learn that, hey, if I had that extra $30 like in my pocket, my entire life would change. But of course you don't get that, and the coverages that you get aren't the greatest, and it's just, you're kind of in that group mentality. It feels kind of socialist, because it kind of is to a certain extent. And that's kind of what unions are there for. It's there to look after each other and make sure you're all right. But it works out. But when it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. And there was a couple scandals that kind of ended up happening when I got ready to leave. There was some money that got moved out of the major fund, millions of dollars kind of got misplaced, which I think that's probably a recurring theme. I don't really know much about the history of that, but I feel like that's something that probably happens a lot. And they also did a big merger where they're like, oh yeah, all these little local chapters are going to now be overseen by, a bigger chapter. So there was a lot of drama and politics involved in the union, and there's not a lot of the ability to freely think. If you don't think like the rest of them, then you kind of get targeted out, and it's kind of like you might as well just be quiet depending on where you're at, because people get very irate. Think of like, grandma and grandpa at Thanksgiving, if they're, a little bit old cast and you're trying to think a little bit differently, they don't like it, and they make themselves known, and no matter what you say or do, you cannot change your mind. That's kind of how this was for majority of being in those meetings. It was kind of fun because, you get to meet some people and you can cheer them up. Especially for me, I like to make people feel better and make them laugh and stuff. But then when it starts getting to like the nitty gritty and reality, very quickly nerves are able to get stretched. So that's where I started at. I guess I was working 15-hour long days pretty much, 10-hour shifts with the 2.5 hour drives. There was no extra per diem for driving there. There was no extra help with that. So I kind of started getting a lot of mental problems with that, because I go to work, I make all this money. I was bringing home about $1,000 a week to about $1,200 because I got a lot of overtime. So anything over 40 was overtime. So I would spend quite a bit of money on gas, mileage, and wear and tear on the vehicle, having to repair things, or I ended up buying a new vehicle because at the time I was coming out of, high school, and my cars that I did have, I got in a couple bad accidents. People ended up running me off the road, and was lucky to be alive. But anyways, I went from a decent car to another decent car that had transmission problems to a mom van that someone gifted me, and it was falling apart. But I'm so thankful that I had that. But it definitely wasn't even making this 2.5 hour drive, 5 hour a day ride. It was not going to be do that. It was a salvage title junker. So I ended up buying a new car. I got a 2019 Volkswagen Jetta, which didn't ask. If you're asking though, I would not buy that thing. It has caused me so many problems, but it was nice. It's nice when it's working. But yeah, I did that. So having to pay off a car on my first year, I did it on my own though. I want to say I did it to myself. But I also didn't choose to work where I was at. I was told, oh yeah, there's plenty of work that can't find workers. And when I got in there, that was the only thing that was open to taking a first year apprentice apparently. And just wasn't what I was expecting. And you're told you work Monday through Friday, 40 hours a week. But you do get kind of coerced if you think about it. That's how I'm going to word it, because it really was. If I said I didn't want to work any of the overtime or anything like that because I kind of wanted to have a life outside of things, I had things I was doing. You have everyone literally on your team that usually makes fun of you, at least for where I was at. Now, when I got to other jobs outside of the refinery, it did get a little bit better because you got a lot of coworkers that end up doing no call, no shows, no show up for work, which is what you hear. So that's why if you're looking for a job, you want a job, this is a perfect place to go. I recommend it because if you show up for work, you're going to get paid. You don't even have to be a good worker, which I know I shouldn't say that, but you really don't. There's a lot of horror slop shows on the job, like people that will make you sick looking at their work or work with them all day. But they show up, they get paid, and they get put on the jobs. If there's a job that needs to be done, and you even have the basic amount of skill, the job has to get done no matter what. They're getting paid, they have deadlines, so it's very steady in that front. As long as there's work, you're going to have it. And at least from what I hear everyone saying, there is more and more need. So this is a good job for you if you want to get paid, if you want to go. Yeah, if you usually have overtime, there's a lot of people that are saying, oh, you're going to work it. And you also got to remember, there's a lot of people on there that are trying to run away from something else, or, they're just like, this is their life, this is their work, this is what they do. Their entire identity is wrapped up in this. So you're going to get a lot of unhealthy, realistic examples for marriage. And I recommend, if you are in there and you're actually wanting to have a decent life, don't let them tell you how to live your life. It's very personable when you're working with people for so long. I think it is wise for people going into the trades who are young to keep yourself informed, weigh things that are being asked, basic wisdom principles. Just not everything that's going to be spoken or put into you every single day for 10 hours a day is actually true and wise. And I'm going to learn this in my second year, which I'm going to just go ahead and jump into real quick. So I worked at the oil refinery, and then I moved on to a couple other places, which I'll get to here in a second. Second wage increase. So I went from about $16.70 to around $19 to $20. I don't have the exact numbers. I apologize. Where I was at in my part of Ohio, it was yearly. There is different parts where you get 2 raises a year. So if you're curious about that, you get paid a whole hell of a lot more, because let's say, you get your first part of your raise, it's an extra $2. So for 6 months, you're getting that extra $2 raise. And then for the later half of the 6 months, whatever, you get another $2 raise, or whatever the equivalent is. And you're going to be getting paid that extra $2 over 6 months, compared to you getting one major raise, getting paid the $4 over the year. It's a little bit funny that I have to say that, but for real, it can mess with your mind when you're actually like in the nitty gritty with it, thinking about it. If you can do the dual raises, definitely a lot better. It depends upon where your work's at, where you're located at for the job. I think that's how it is, or maybe it's where your union's at specifically, which that's where it is. It just comes down to where you are living and where your local union is. So yeah, just don't expect you to move to get to a place where you can do that, or specifically go to a union hall for that. But if you're wanting to know, there is that option. And it's not given to every single one, obviously. Like I said, it's a part of whatever local you go to. My job after that, I went to working into a tank plant, Army tank plant. It was kind of cool. Had to get special clearance and such. Had to have a badge. And I did that for a little bit. This is before the pay raise. And then after that, I went to a water treatment plant. And I did that, and it was interesting because during winter, we had built a big scaffold. I think we were using 6 foot. No, I think we were using 7 foot scaffolding for that, and we had it up like 4 or 5 scaffolds, and we had tarp it all in for winter because this job needed to get done. And we you put a big huge piece of plastic on it, and it's not properly secured down. Well, you get a crazy 40-mile-per-hour wind, which we did one morning, and everything blows over, and it completely destroyed all of the work that we did. For one, it destroyed my toolbox, just absolutely just crunched it. And a lot of other people lost their stuff too, so I got some free upgrades of that, which was nice. Go online and buy some things that you wanted to get. I had a cheap 2-foot level, and I ended up going and buying a like $100 level, wooden level, like all the oldies want you to have, either that or the Stabilas. But I went with the wood, which I kind of wish I would have went Stabila. But yeah, I got an upgrade for that. It was kind of cool, but it was kind of crazy because you're taking apart everything that you just spent the last week or 2 weeks building. So, take it as you will. I thought it was funny. A lot of old people's stuff got messed up, and hearing them complain and moan, I loved it. But I did that. I think that's when my second wage increase kind of kicked in. So that was kind of nice. Honestly, I didn't see much of an increase because when I was at the oil refinery, like I said, I had overtime. So when I went to working at these other places, the water treatment plant, tank plant, so that they kind of brought your hours back down. So you're actually starting to work 8s, I believe. That's what I was doing. But I still had the long drive. I was driving probably about an hour and 45 minutes at this point one way because it was a little bit closer, luckily, but not by much. And I think I was making on average about maybe $800 a week, somewhere around there. I did get a couple times we got special instances of getting paid something special, so that was kind of nice. I can't really recall what it was, but I think I did get like per diem for a few jobs. It might have been when we had to do something special off the main place. Very rare instance because I was the young apprentice. I got taken along to a couple of the higher places, but the guy running the job, he would need help with doing some things, and it was very basic, easy, which I get the older guys would do, but I was really interested in wanting to learn more. And there's a lot of speculation from other people because the foreman would get really pissed off at me for being like, hey, can I learn about this? And he would end up yelling and screaming. The guy actually died of a heart attack about a year after I left, which is I feel sad, but he it wasn't no shock. He had a lot of anger problems, as a lot of people do. Really just angry man. And I wanted to learn from him how to kind of plot and maybe learn a little bit of the blueprint stuffs because someone has to do it, and he just would not budge, would not share. And I was like, all right, fine, I'll just stick here with my Peter in my hand, and I guess do this. It wasn't cool. I was a little bit more hopeful that I'd get something more. So I did that, water treatment plant, and then I went on to an elementary school that was about 45 minutes down the road, and I also worked at a Air Force base for a while. That was actually before the elementary school, so I worked at Air Force base. That was 7 minutes down the road. Best time I think I've ever had. I got to sleep in and drive there and come back home, and I had a lot more free time. It was a joy. I was doing that for probably 6-7 months. And the funny thing with that one is we had a guy working with us, and you had to do a background check and all that stuff. You had to get special clearance for that because Air Force base. And he worked on this job for about 6 months. And then what ended up happening was apparently he had something on his record. I don't know what it was, but he one day we're in there eating lunch, and all these guys walking in there, and they're talking to the foreman, and he's looking over, and you just look at his face, and he's staring at our table, and he's looking back at them, and his face kind of turns like a little bit white, and he walks over, and he's like, hey, you got to go. And it's like, what? He's like, yeah, apparently they found something on the record. I'm not going to get into it because private, but we got to go. We have to go to the front desk, the front area or whatever. So he got up and grabbed it. He's like, you got to get your stuff, got his stuff, and he walked off, and we were all like, what the heck? This guy has been with us since the beginning of this project. We were getting very close to the end, and it was a little ridiculous, but that ended up happening. That was a little fun story. I almost got hit in the head by a hammer too. That's maybe a story for another time. So third year went to it, was making around $25 an hour. I don't really remember what the total paycheck kind of was looking at for that. It was probably, it sounds like they're major leaps, and I mean they are, but I probably went from up to about $900 or so, because also when I was doing this, we had lots of rain days, and I ended up jumping ship little bit after this, and it wasn't making too much sense. I was around people that I didn't like being around. I wasn't in love with the job necessarily with these people. And this is just something that's big. When you had a good crew, life was awesome. You love showing up for work, you love talking, you love doing all that stuff. But when you have a not so good crew and you're constantly bouncing around all these different people, it gets ridiculous, because everyone's trying to act like there's some big tough thing, or they know better, or they're not working together with you, they're working together with someone else, which is fine until you realize it's a competition, and then everyone's making fun of you, or everyone's praising you, and everyone's flipping, and it's all these different emotions on a dime, and that's not really what I was trying to go for. I was kind of like, I want to do my job, I want to kind of do it as best that I'm able to do. I want to learn and improve, and I just want to kind of keep decent morals, and you don't get that, surprisingly. In case you didn't know that, you don't always get that, but it can be a fun time if you're into that, if you're always joking and stuff. But I come from a more religious background, I guess you could say, to a certain extent, and there was things that I wanted to respect about myself that other people were making hard to do. I wasn't like the prophet walking around saying all that stuff, but there's a lot of people who they don't care, and it's in a sense where it's like, dude, you should probably go to a hospital for the things that you're doing to yourself. It's bad. There's just a lot of different faces you see, but once again, that's also for me. I'm more of a softer guy. I'm more of a, I like having peace. I care about what people think. I always want to improve. So for that, I'm constantly like searing my conscience every time that I'm doing this. And if I don't like you, I still try giving you the benefit of the doubt. So I'm still trying to like take care of what you say, what you feel. I'm constantly trying to learn and take that in. So it was a problem. But anyways, from there, I jumped ship. I went to do residential, and it was working with just another guy. He was a mason. I think he was like a third or fourth generation stonemason or bricklayer. And I learned a lot doing that, and it was a lot better. I went from having benefits and all that to going down to $20 per hour. So it's a big, massive hit. You don't get paid benefits doing residential or working for a non-union typically, and I didn't. But work-life balance as a whole, it got so much more better. I felt a lot more happier. I enjoyed it. I learned a lot more. I feel so much more confident about potentially going and doing local jobs. If I wanted to go do that, I wouldn't have a problem whipping it out. I like being confident what I'm doing. I like confidence a little bit. Like, even if I know how to do something, if I still have that doubt in the back of my mind, like, oh, but what if something happens? I don't know what to do. But for the most part, like, when you're this many years in, like, you can pretty much finagle something if you're worth your salt. And I remind myself, there's other people that are way worse than me that you can trust with a lot more. So it's like, I still think whatever I would do would be probably better than half the people I saw on some of these jobs. And the other half, there's no way. I mean, there's people that are doing it since they're like 5 years old, and they're just literally messiahs. So there's also the other half. I don't want to say I'm something special, because I'm not. I'm awful with the saw. But confidence goes a long way, and there's a lot of money to be made. A lot of money to be made. So that was nice about doing residential. Going from the union, you work the buildings residentially, you work the chimneys, and backyard fire pits, that kind of stuff. So it really, really was nice. Fourth year, I would have been $31 and like 31 cents. It was something like that for the hourly wage, and then also benefits, which I think some people were making about $1,200 to $1,400 a week off of that, which is nice. But of course, you're 4 years into this, and with bricklaying specifically, you gotta remember there's a lot of rain days, there's a lot of weather days, there's a lot of this and that. Materials aren't coming in, so sometimes you gotta take a break from there. They'll send you somewhere else for a day or something. So there's a lot more things, and you also gotta remember your drive, your time with that. You don't get paid for driving. So, but it's a good job. I think if I would have started off probably with a better company closer to town, and would have had a couple good guys in my corner, I probably would have stayed, honestly. But my experience was I was being shipped here and there and here, 2.5 hours away, an hour 45 there. Was with people that were crack addicts and meth heads and stuff like that. And it's just like, oh my gosh, what's going on? But would I recommend to trades? I do, but I think it takes a special kind of person. I think you have to not care about what other people think. I think you have to put yourself first, but you also have to remain humble, which is the toughest thing. Is a lot of these guys that are in there, they're not humble. They are very strong-willed. They think they're hot stuff when they're really not. Which, I kind of sounded like a little bit of that, but I'm most so talking towards the end where it's like, okay, I know what I can do and I know what I can't do. And that's their attitude you gotta remain. And you gotta remember, if you ask for help, no one's going to, they'll make fun of you, but they're gonna respect that more than trying to act like you know what you're doing. So it kind of goes, you have to kind of know when you're supposed to do what you think you know to do and when you're supposed to ask for help. I got a few more stories I'm sure I could share. If you want me to share these, let me know in the comments and I'll go ahead and talk about it more. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to speak this out because this is my first career choice that I made in my life. I was a dishwasher beforehand. I worked at a animal clinic before that, and or a animal shelter. And this is where I spent a lot of my time, a lot of my effort, a lot of my studies. So yeah, thanks for watching, and until next time.